Hey folks, thanks for listening this evening.
Hey, how are you guys? RGCWV, Random Geek Culture in West Virginia. I am your host, Luke Hersey, and this is Alex McLean. I think he's over here. Yeah, he's over here. And tonight we actually have a podcast. Usually we have more people, but we're doing a podcast on something that me and Alex specifically do a lot of, which is gardening and fermenting. We've been talking about doing this episode for a while, and we just, I mean, with the season, Mother's Day is coming. That's the time to put your garden in, and so we decided that we wanted to do a podcast sometime around when people are starting to put their gardens in, because maybe you'll watch this episode and you'll be like, oh, well, maybe this is something I want to do too. So this is what we're gonna do. Alex, you want to give a little bit more detail on that?
So a few years ago, I started making hot sauce. I don't, what got me into this? What got me interested in this in the first place? I don't really remember. It might have been Luke's encouragement, but yeah, I started to grow hot peppers, habaneros mostly, and, got to reading about how it's done and have gotten a little better every year, gotten a little more advanced, try more creative things. And, it turns out that's a process that there's more to it than maybe you'd think, but it's not so complicated that you can't do it at home. So yeah, this we're going to be talking about making hot sauce and making stuff out of what we grow in our gardens.
I mean, I definitely think that I might have influenced that a little bit, but I do think that around the same time that we started working together, we both were talking about our love of hot sauces. In fact, I think it was when we were working together because we were talking about how horrible the air quality was in there.
Oh
So,
yeah.
I mean, I every night I would constantly make a hot ramen, at the start of my shift, and so I'd add some sriracha, some spicy Asian mustard, and they would be my hot ramen. And I'm like, how can I do this? And we were talking about it, and I was like, how can I emulate this? And so this was one of my first projects. I came up with a basically an emulation of that same ramen sauce, but actually from the same kind of idea that goes behind the sriracha and the hot spicy Asian mustard. Basically, it's a kind of a jelly, but it's got jelly properties, but it's not exactly a jelly. But it's got cayenne, Thai pepper, um, Italian frying pepper, and then what? Oh yeah, mustard seed and white pepper, and fantastic. It's fantastic. It comes out really good. So that's kind of a primer of talking about how we got these wheels turning on these hot sauces. Alex, what was your first like hot sauce attempt?
My first hot sauce was more of what's like, I learned later is a blended salsa, that it wasn't really a true hot sauce because it wasn't fermented and it was tomato based. And just, I don't know, I just kind of threw stuff in a blender and and that was it. And that was it. And it was good. It was good as far as that goes. But I knew at the time that there was room for improvement.
And that's one of the things. It's taken some experimentation. It's taken some uh, trying to figure out what's the best way to do this. And one of the things that I remember back when we were first talking about this was our best way to put this, our disdain, both of us, for how much vinegar they put in hot sauce, vinegar and even salt into hot sauce, and it just I want the flavor of the peppers. I don't necessarily want the flavor of the vinegar and the salt. And then I mean, I don't know if it was Alex or me, but we were starting to look into, you want to take out that flavor, then ferment your stuff, and then that'll keep your shelf life, because that's one of the things that bigger companies do, is they will just add a bunch of vinegar in there and skip the fermenting process or shorten it. And that's a big thing, is a lot of companies will do a ferment, but it will be a very short-lived ferment cycle.
Now, most hot sauces that you see on the shelf, they are fermented. They are fermented. Part of the reason for fermentation is to extend the shelf life. That a blended salsa, if you just take raw fruit and put it in a blender, that has the shelf life of cut raw fruit, which is, not not a day.
Right.
Okay, you should eat that today. Um, Fermentation extends the shelf life considerably. That really, a completely fermented hot sauce should be shelf stable for like a year.
Right. Right. They provided you don't crack that seal. Once you crack that seal, it should be refrigerated. That's what I do with all my hot sauces. Is after I crack that seal, I put it in the fridge. I do that with my jams and my jellies, my hot pepper jams and jellies. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, Alexa. I think what we really need to start talking about is the beginning of the process, which is the gardening. So here 2 years ago, we had Mr. Lance Murray, that's a local farmer, on the podcast, and he talked about sustainable farming. And if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. It's a fantastic episode. I really like it. That whole series that we did for the post-apocalyptic Appalachia series was really, really fantastic. I enjoyed it a lot. But I employ some of those same tactics on my garden, and I get some really good results from that process. And I grow not just hot peppers for my salsa. I do tomatoes. I do actually, one of my favorite things is grape tomatoes. But then I also do romaine lettuce. I really like romaine. I do a lot of different bell peppers. I love bell peppers. Fresh bell pepper is just fantastic. And then I do some cucumbers and some squash and zucchini sometimes. But yeah, I one of those things you want to do is you just want to experiment. You want to you want to see if you actually like this. And one of the things that I do, that's kind of like how Lance described, was instead of a cover crop, I put down a landscape fabric, because I hate weeding. I mean, who likes weeding? Yeah. So
Luke's garden is really interesting because he uses no-till farming.
Right.
Rather than getting a rototiller out there or, by hand, digging up the dirt, turn it all over. It just cuts a groove straight through the ground. And then you put the stuff, the gardening, what's the stuff? Landscaping fabric over top of it. But it doesn't tear up the soil.
Yeah, and you're trying to cultivate that earthworm population.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, because it's always been the common belief, you got to turn up your soil to to build that up. It's not necessarily true if you're doing it right. So when I'm done with my garden, I leave my landscape fabric all the way through the winter, and then when I go to put in my new garden, I take that up. If some of the grass is growing up through where the holes were, I pull those up by hand, and then put down new landscaping fabric, and then I put out all my new vegetables. I get seedlings. I don't do from seeds. That's a complication. I don't try.
I've tried that, and it's never worked.
If you're in North Central, though, great place to go to get seedlings is Freed's Greenhouse in Saltwell. Fantastic. Mm-hmm. That's where I go. That's where I've been going for like 4 or 5 years. So anyway,
It's
Anyway,
off the
I
Jerry Dove Drive. No, I feel like plugging them.
oh
Like,
yeah, yeah,
it's, like they don't, we're not affiliated with them.
yeah.
But yeah, it's off the Jerry Dove Drive exit. They've got
No, they're the
everything.
exit before. If you're going
Oh,
southbound,
right, right.
yeah,
That's where I
the
went.
Saltwell Shinson
Mhm.
exit is what they're
Yeah.
off of. Though, of course, if
And
you take the Jerry Dove, there is a road that connects the two now.
I like them because they have a lot more variety than what I had seen at my hardware stores, because most of my peppers came from Lowe's.
Yeah,
Okay, and that's fine, but just they had a lot of specialty peppers, a lot of that's where I got my chocolate habaneros from. And I don't know, those are too hot, I'm not growing those again. But
now,
um
speaking of yours though, let's talk about what you do, since cuz you have not a big plot of land for a garden. I mean, I don't have a huge piece of property, but I have enough for a garden, but you don't really have a place to do that. So what do you do, Alex?
when I first started doing this, I was in an apartment. Even my house now, I could probably build a raised garden, but I don't want to do that. So, I have big pots. I just grow them like potted plants outside on the porch. And it one of my early struggles was I didn't get big enough pots. I tried to grow. I didn't realize how big they were going to get, and I found my plants grow much much larger than Luke's do, but
But you
I don't have
use
space for
tomato
as many of
cages.
them. Right, right. Peppers need to be in tomato cages just because they grow so dang big, and they'll break over. They'll fall under their own weight whenever they get a lot of peppers on them. But I think it's because I'm using potting soil, I'm using fertilizer, stuff like that. Yeah, I'm growing much fewer of them, but the yield is incredible. There's so many. There's so many. I still have I have too many peppers.
And what
But yeah, if you don't have ground to till up, or you just don't want to, get a great big pot. Get a great big plastic pot and a bunch of uh,
seedlings?
potting soil.
Oh yeah.
Put a seedling in there, and it's gonna look kind of funny to have this big, like 3x3 garden pot and a little tiny seedling in it growing up, but it'll grow. It'll grow bigger than you think.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you can farm on your back porch, on your front porch.
Yeah, it's so funny though. I went over to Alex's late season, and like his walkway, like he could barely squeeze by because these big pots have these huge plants with like 100 to 200 habaneros on it. You know, that's mostly what you do half the time is habaneros. Did you do cayennes last year?
Yeah, yeah, I tried to grow cayennes, but they came in ripe later than I wanted them to, because I kind of want all my peppers to be ripe at the same time so I can make a sauce when they come ripe. And just the cayennes didn't come ripe at the same time, and that was rough.
The thing with cayennes, though, once they're ripe, they don't necessarily need to be picked. Cayennes
Yeah,
can stay on the vine ripe for a lot longer than most other plants, and that's
one
one of the
kind of
reasons why
challenge
they're
of growing peppers in West Virginia is like this is a crop that comes ripe late in the season.
yeah.
Like in the fall, in the early, mid, late fall, that's when these things come on, and you're kind of racing against the frost to get them ripe and get them off of there. Because I mean, it's every year. Every year the frost kills them,
Yeah.
and that's just the cycle of it. And there are always still more to get ripe still on the vine whenever the frost comes.
Now, a old trick, if you are going to get a frost soon and you have a bunch of peppers or a bunch of tomatoes or a bunch of whatever, and they're not ripe yet and you want them to ripen on the vine, what you can do is take a spade shovel and cut off half of the root structure with that spade shovel, a day or two before it's going to frost, and it will ripen on the vine. It's
It
an old,
kind of kills the plant,
yeah.
but that's kind of why it works. The plant knows it's getting killed, and it gets its fruit out fast.
It's
Yeah,
trying
that does
to
work.
it's trying to genetically survive.
It's just peppers are not a plant that grows naturally in this environment. It's too cold for them.
Right.
you
Right.
know, I'm told you can overwinter them if you bring them in and have somewhere that they get partial sunlight but not freezing temperatures. I'm told you can overwinter a pepper plant, but I've never fooled with that.
Yeah, that's I feel like that's overcomplicating it. That's overhandling it, bud.
It, it always hurts a little bit at the end of the season. All of my hard work, this plant that I've grown all summer, trimmed it, put stuff on it all the time, and harvested it, and then you got to tear it all up, throw it in the trash.
Now,
you know,
we talked about gardening, but here's a good thing that we want to talk about and want to bring up into the podcast is one of the reasons why you want to grow your own vegetables versus buy them at the grocery store. Yeah, you could buy peppers at the grocery store, but there's a key reason why you don't necessarily want to do that. Half of the time, those are not fresh. Those have been frozen. And if they have been frozen, and Alex has experimented with this himself, if that pepper has been frozen, there's a good possibility it will either not ferment or not ferment well. And so you want that pepper to be fresh. Plus, half the time when you go to the grocery store, all the habaneros, half of them are already bad already anyway. So, yeah,
aside from that, they are really expensive. For like to make a whole batch of sauce, I have a whole sink full of peppers. Well, my God, if I bought that many peppers from the grocery store, one, I would buy all the peppers they have. And two, that would be several $100s
right,
in peppers.
right.
like,
When you
I don't
buy
know.
a seedling, and nurture it through the season, you're spending like maybe $10. So you buy a couple seedlings, you're 30-40 bucks in. But if you bought it from the grocery store, you're like several $100s in. So, and you're gonna get like a very low yield of hot sauce. So now, Alex, since we're on hot sauce, you have brought some of your hot sauce to show.
Yeah, yeah. If you're watching the video here, you'll see this is this year's apple cinnamon sauce. It's a lot more runny, I guess. You would say it's lighter. It comes out really fast.
You probably
You
could have
know,
added a little pectin. Um,
yeah, I don't put pectin in my sauces. I just let them be the way they are. Pectin is a thickening agent.
yeah, I like the
Um,
powder stuff for my sauce. When I do a sauce, I add the powder in because you can add just a little bit into that to thicken it. The only thing is you got to follow the manufacturer's processing on how you when you add it. But go on, Alex.
But yeah, this, I think I used Fuji apples, which are my favorite kind of apple just because they're very sweet. This has chocolate habanero and your regular orange habanero. Now they call them chocolate because of their color, not because of their
They don't
taste.
taste like
They're
chocolate.
they're brown habanero peppers. They're a little hotter than a regular habanero. Um, and I put a assortment of other vegetables in my fermentation, like carrots and other onions and garlic and stuff like that.
That's a
But
good.
and then I also put a apple cider vinegar. You do need some vinegar in with the mix
Oh,
to thin it down and to give it more flavor.
now here's a question. You mentioned carrots. What's one of the key reasons of why we always had carrots? Me and you both had carrots.
Carrots are something that you have to put something in the sauce to offset the hotness. If you just put hot peppers in a sauce, what you are going to make is going to taste like lava. Okay, that it's not going to have flavor. It's just going to be the hot. You need to put some more things in there for flavor. Carrots are number one, good for fermentation. Number two, they're sweet but not overly so, and the result is not going to taste like carrots.
Yeah,
The other more flavorful things are going to overpower that carrot flavor, so it just kind of makes the sauce a little bit better.
yeah. It
And you
soaks
can't
and
put your finger on why.
permeates. Permeates that carrot. It doesn't make it the carrot flavor. It it it, it stretches out that hotness. And mixes the hotness in with the sweet, and it makes it a more dynamic flavor. So
And then, can I talk about my other
yeah, I
sauce?
was gonna say, let's go ahead and
Yeah,
see your other sauce,
that
because this
the other
one's
one that
really
I
cool
made this
because it's
year
West Virginia
is
all over.
yes, I'm especially proud of this one. This is Ramps hot sauce. This was made from ramps that were dug from several locations. Several friends sourced ramps for me. Kurt Dudash and Rusty Smith and my grandma Shirley Payne, and I dug some on their property myself. A lot of ramps. Poured a lot of ramps in this thing. Um, they fermented very well. Was very pleased with how well they fermented. The sauce itself, I really wanted this to be a ramp bomb. I wanted this stuff to reek because I love them. I love ramps, and I love when they reek. And
Hey Alex, real
um,
quick, for our non necessarily West Virginia viewers, what is a ramp?
Ramps are a type of wild leek that grows in the Appalachian region. It's hard to say quite what they taste like by comparing them to other things. It's kind of like onion, it's kind of like garlic, but not really.
Not
It's
really
not
any of
really. They're
those.
they're unique. Um,
Good to know.
they're a foraged food. They're very difficult you can't really cultivate them.
No, you can't.
Not in gardening or in pots or anything like that. People cultivate them in the woods, where they grow naturally.
One of the
Um,
largest farms of leeks is a basically a mountain, and it's 100 acre like mountain, and it's just a ramp farm, and it's all wooded area and everything. It's
yeah.
cultivated woods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. They can't be farmed. They're not something that can be traditionally farmed. They're a foraged food, kind of like truffles or something.
Right.
Um, or locust blooms or stuff like that.
That's a good example is
Mhm.
truffles, because that's
Yeah.
something that you can't farm.
Hmm. Um, but yeah, this sauce surprisingly didn't turn out as rampy as I had hoped that it would. Despite being loaded with ramps, I think just the hotness sort of overpowers them. And I found that it comes out more in cooking. If you put this in a soup or in something that you're going to cook that in there and not just as a topping for a taco or something, it brings the ramp flavor out a lot more. And yeah, it's a way to have ramps year round.
And that's one of the things that that's one of the things that I wanted to highlight about that, talking about that sauce, is it's some sauces are good, on the taco, on your sandwich. Like the apple cinnamon is really good on a sandwich. What was the one that we were talking about that one was really good on? It was like
Like
because I
ham
tried it.
sandwich or
Yeah.
turkey.
Turkey.
Apple
Yes,
cinnamon goes really
that
well with a
turkey
turkey
is
sandwich
really
or a
good on
turkey
turkey.
sub.
But the ram sauce, there's some sauces that are just so much better cooking. Like for instance, there's some sauces that like the sriracha sauce is good on everything, but the dynamic of how it tastes on a sandwich versus how it tastes on scrambled eggs is so totally different. And
Oh yeah, ramp sauce and scrambled eggs, or like diced potatoes. You know, you or scallop
oh
potatoes, real good.
yeah, that I could imagine that being really good. All right, moving on. So another thing that you can do with your ferment. Okay, so this one, actually, you know what? I'll do this one first. So this one is a mango habanero jelly. I got a recipe for this, and I don't ferment this. I cut the peppers. I cut and I process the peppers, the mango, and the carrots all together in one shot, and turn it into a jelly and put it in, and it comes out fantastic. It's great on cream cheese with crackers, and this is a good sauce, but it's not fermented, and you don't have to ferment everything that you have, because one of the key ingredients for this is vinegar, and you can actually taste the vinegar in this, but the sweetness of the jelly really overpowers that. You can taste it a little bit, but it's not too bad. Because I use an apple cider vinegar. What that, in my opinion, if you're going to use a vinegar, use an apple cider, because that's a much better flavor than like distilled white. Distilled white is like the white bread of vinegars, in my opinion. But then here's the one that I really wanted to show, and this one I came up with on my own, and this one is really kind of fantastic. So what I do is, so there's different ways that you can ferment, and I'll show you one right now. This is one that I ferment in a vacuum jar. It's basically a fermenting jar, and it's got a little see this on the top. It's got a little gasket on the top that lets gas out but doesn't let air in, because that's one of the things that you want. You don't want your air to get into your ferment, because that'll spoil your ferment. This produces the when you're fermenting, you get produce a gas, and so I'm fermenting fruit, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But what I do with this is I actually put this in a vacuum seal bag. That's distinct for the process of this one. So I get Thai chilies, I get pomegranate, and red raspberries, and I ferment. I put all of those in with my salt. I'm not going to get into the ratio on exactly how. I would stress, don't just watch this video. I'm hoping this video wets your whistle to want to start fermenting and to read up on it, because there's some very good sources on exactly how to. But to break it down quite quickly, I put in my products, I weigh it, and I put a gram weight of 4 in that in that vacuum seal bag. I vacuum seal it, and then what happens is there's no air in it, and then it produces its own gas. And when the vacuum seal bag gets puffy, and when I say puffy, like about to explode, then it's done. So after it's done, then I process this. I put my product on the stove. I grind it all up with an immersion blender, and then I add my sugar and my pectin in, and I end up with a jelly that is really kind that I call it my raspberry Thai Pama jelly. And
I gotta say that jelly, I think, is the best thing that either of us have made. That, like,
by accident,
it is really great.
It's if you go to Buffalo Wild Wings, it's similar to Asian Zing, but it's both hotter and sweeter, and because of the flavor, the pomegranate and the raspberry, it's more dynamic. So it think in that direction. It's not exactly that, but it's kind of like that.
It's a lot better than Asian Zing, and that's like my favorite flavor at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Same. That's what I always get. That's what I always get. So going back to this. So what this is everybody's, heard about or gotten the banned fruit. Local high school sells banned oranges or different fruits or whatever. So this was a purchase of banned fruit. We actually forgot that we purchased it. We got the big huge box on our front porch of fruit, and we ate it for like a week. And I was like, Cassie, we're never going to finish all of this. And she's like, I guess we'll just throw it away. And I'm, no, we're not going to throw it away. We're not going to throw it away. And I'm like, wait a second. So this was in like November, and nothing was occupying my fermenting jar. So I was like, well, wait a second. I know what I'm going to do with this. So I took the remainder of the apples and the pears and the oranges and the mandarin oranges, and I'm going to turn this into a jelly. It's been fermenting for about 6 months, and it's still going. It's still producing.
I saw bubbles come up whenever you picked it up.
Yeah, it's still going. It's still going. It's crazy. And that's the thing. If it stops producing bubbles when you're fermenting, that means it's done. Yeah, it means do whatever you're gonna do to it. And I wouldn't really recommend fermenting anything longer than like 6 months. Usually like a month or two, and you're done. But
now, to reiterate something that Luke was talking about, like if you're interested in fermenting, watch a different video. There's a lot of other folks that explain this much better than what I would. I mean, we could, but I don't want the video to be about that.
Correct.
But to give like just a basic, what is fermentation? You take stuff, fruits and stuff, and put it in a jar that is filled with a saline solution. You distilled water. You want distilled water, not tap water. Has chlorine in it, which will kill the bacteria that you're trying to grow.
Which is what chlorine is. It's made to do that.
Right.
It's made to kill bacteria.
But you don't want to kill off the bacteria. You want to grow bacteria because it's a specific kind of bacteria called lactobacillus or lactic bacteria that will grow in salt water, but not if it's too salty. And if it's not salty enough, you get other bad bacteria, and then it just rots.
Yeah, it's a point. It's a point. It's a 0.02 to 0.05. It's a very narrow range. And if you
and watch another video on how to do that, but it's basically salt water, fruit, and thyme. That's really all fermentation is. And then the lactobacillus is in there eating out all of the sugars and everything, and then their gases escape. You don't want gases to come back in because that will make it just rot. Fermentation is essentially just controlled rotting, and then once it's truly it is.
I mean, I know.
And once it's completely fermented like that, there's nowhere left to go. There's nothing left for bacteria to get into. And once it's done, once it's spent, well, then it keeps. Fermentation is very ancient, very old. It's how like
sauerkraut.
Old timey times people kept food to last over the winter. Or to last more than a day.
More than a day. Oh, you were talking about the type of water, distilled water. Another thing that I want to point out, kosher salt. You don't want to use table salt because that is iodized. And when I say iodized, meaning it has iodine mixed in with it, to kill bacteria. That's another thing that will kill your ferment. Use kosher
Mm-hmm.
salt. It has no additives. It's just salt.
So yeah, you just leave it in the jar, and when it's making bubbles, then you know you're good. The bubbles are the gases that are trying to escape, and when it stops making bubbles, then you're ready to put it in a blender, make sauce.
And I mean, we've tried it a couple different ways. I would suggest just buying a fermentation jar or even fermentation lid and vacuumer for it, because that's just the easier way to do it. Or the vacuum seal bags. I advocate for those. Those are really easy to use. That's a cheap way to start dabbling into fermentation. Um, but the if you actually use like a regular mason jar with a lid for your fermentation, it'll explode. When that gas
Yeah.
builds up, it will explode this jar.
Mm-hmm.
So,
My other tip on that is also sanitation. Like you need to practice good sanitation protocols for that. You need to be as clean as possible in everything that you're doing whenever you're putting stuff in the jar. I mean, try not to even breathe in it, really. You know, because you don't want to get contaminants in there. You don't want to get bacteria in there because like it'll rot on you.
now
Um,
how do you sanitize your stuff?
with bleach for one thing, and
Okay.
I usually run it through the dishwasher like twice, and I run it hot.
Yeah.
And the jars, I boil the jars. Like I bring a pot which has also been cleaned with bleach up to a boil the jars, pour them in there, pour them
Now
in there hot.
now I do the dishwasher method for a lot of my stuff, but like these big huge fermentation jars, they're usually a little bit bigger than what I can really do in my dishwasher. So what I'll do is there is an oven sanitation method as well. It's a certain specific controlled temperature, but I mean, if you're interested in just look it up. Don't just take our word for it. Look, that would be the highlight of this episode is
Mm-hmm.
look this up.
Go somewhere else to look that up. And it's easy to just search for it and find things for here. But just in general, sanitation is important. If it's poorly sanitized, it'll grow mold.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that Alex said when I was first starting to ferment, and I didn't really understand the whole process, um, because one of the things that you'll get sometimes on your ferment is like like a white like what you might think might be mold, and what Alex said, in I've always followed this, but again, look this other stuff up. Um, is if it looks fuzzy, it's probably mold. If it's just white and like chalky, it's what's called calm yeast, and that is a yeast that is produced during your fermentation process. Just when you're done, scrape it off, discard it. It's fine.
Growing yeast like that is an indication of a failed sanitation, but it's not the worst thing that can happen. Don't blend that in. It
Yeah,
like
don't
for
do it.
no reason other than because it tastes bad.
Yeah.
Like it's not bad for you. It won't make you sick. It just doesn't taste very good. You just dip that out with a spoon. But yeah, it can grow yeast. It happens. It happens to lots of mine.
Yeah. Uh,
I've never had mold, but forums that I'm on the internet, they show a lot of mold pictures.
I I will say that if you are interested, the Reddit subgroup R Fermentation is fantastic.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
lot of good resources on that one. Oh man. I'm so stuffy. Sorry, guys. I'm a little.
Yeah. So you're gonna make just a jelly. Is that what all fruits are in that jar there?
So that is apples, um, pears, uh, regular oranges, and then mandarin oranges. Um,
Okay.
so what I'm going to do, and from a other ferment from a year ago, this is a grape juice that I fermented and then blended down, sifted out, and then rebottled. And if you look, I sealed it with wax so then nothing can get in. And so I've been trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as the juice of it, and then I'm going to use that as the product. I'm going to discard the brine from that, but I'm going to blend up all that fruit and then add this juice, and then I'm going to make what I'm going to dub as prison wine jelly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting. I don't know exactly how it's gonna turn out, but I think it's gonna be interesting. For my mother-in-law, we got her from a local place, moonshine jelly, and it was really good. It was really I mean, there's obviously no alcohol in it because in the processing phase you're boiling your product, so um so there's no alcohol in it, but it's got that flavor. It's got that strong moonshine flavor. It brings a teardrop to my eye. Country roads.
Yeah, and that's a good point that it's never something that I've looked into, but making wine is a somewhat similar process.
Right.
It doesn't use lactic. It's not lactic fermentation. It's a yeast-based fermentation,
Yeah.
but similar equipment.
Yeah.
I've thought about it.
Yeah, I've thought about it a couple times too. Obviously, you don't add salt into it,
Yeah,
but I mean, I gotta tell you, this has been sitting here long enough. It smells like wine.
yeah, yeah. I mean, a lactic fermentation can have alcohol in it, but like it's a negligible amount. And whenever you pasteurize it, you boil that away.
Yeah,
It's not useful as alcohol, you know.
yeah, and that's fine. Where I'm not trying to cultivate, an actual measurable alcohol. Maybe someday I'll do a wine or a beer or something like that. But this is
It'd be
this
interesting.
and that
Yeah.
and that's the thing that we do a lot on this show is we do hobbies, and this is a hobby of ours. Our hobby is to, I mean, to ferment and to garden and everything, and this it's a fun hobby, and it's one that a lot of people can enjoy. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like doing my jellies so much. Is I make so much, I can't eat it all on my own, but a lot of people really enjoy my jellies. I mean, Alex enjoys my jelly, and one of the ladies that that Cassie works with, she gets so excited when it's jelly making season, because she's like, "Oh my gosh, Luke's gonna make more jelly."
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I like it. I like it. I like making people happy. Making people happy makes me happy.
No, I like to give my hot sauce away to friends and stuff. I like, here, don't leave without a bottle of hot sauce.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway, I think we've pretty much reached the end of this episode. I think we hit most of the bases. Don't you think so, Alex?
Yeah, yeah. I wish I had a fermentation jar to show, but this isn't the time of year for that. Come back in the fall. You know?
Yeah, his fermentation jars is like some alchemy shit. It's like
No,
It's got it's got the
really.
you got the thing on the top, and then the other thing, and then you know.
Well, okay, so I in the past use an airlock um, lid that it basically has like a little vial on the top that has water in it, and then there's a cap over top of that water, and then whenever the gas escapes, it goes through the water in the airlock, and the water keeps the air from coming back in.
Right.
Um, I've since gone to using the lids, the gasket lids like Luke has, because they're easier.
Yeah, they're
They're
way
just,
easier.
yeah, yeah. Um, we didn't talk about making dry spices. That
Oh
was something,
yeah,
yeah.
so that's the recent thing that we're both been dabbling in. In previous episodes, you've seen me hanging the cayenne peppers and the Thai chilies. I'll hang those for 6 months to a year, basically until they're dry, till they feel crispy. Whenever you hang dry anything, you want to use some kind of pepper that is not thick, that doesn't have a lot of water in it. Essentially, that can hang dry and it won't spoil. If you're at all wondering if it starts turning black or whatever, crack it open. Half the almost every time it's got mold in it, and just discard it. Um, and whenever you hang dry something, you do want to inspect all your stuff to make sure that it all looks good. I like doing it because it looks really cool, but I end up throwing away like half of what I hang. But then Alex, you've what are you doing now?
Yeah, I got me, well, it was a birthday present, I believe, birthday or Christmas. My dad got me a dehydrator. Dehydrator is typically used to make jerky, which I might get into that eventually. That's on my list of things to get in making jerky too. Different video, different topic. What I have already done in it is dehydrating peppers to make a powder out of them, and more recently, I made a batch of ramps, that just the greens, just the leaves of the ramps, put those in the dehydrator, grind them up into a powder to make a ramp seasoning, or mix them together to make a ramp hot pepper seasoning. You know what I mean? But yeah, the same thing can be done with a lot of different fruits that you can put these into the dehydrator and takes all the water out of them. That's how people make banana chips and like apple crisp things.
Right.
You can make that out of them. Um, but what I'm using them for is hot pepper flakes.
When I hang dry my stuff, so I've got two two specific spices. Um, One is so I showed you the ramen sauce. Essentially, I'm doing the same thing in one of my seasons. It's got mustard seed, white pepper, and then cayenne peppers, then Thai chili peppers, and then I grind those up in the spice grinder, and I call it Luke's Spicy Spice. Um, but it's got mustard in it, so there's only certain things that I can add it to. And then another one that I make is just cayennes and Thai chilies. Gosh, this last year I had so many leftover cayennes and Thai chilies that I'm one of those huge, big, thick jars. I filled that, and it's just the cayenne and the Thai chili, and then kosher salt, to balance it out a little bit. And I called it Cool Guy Thai Kai.
Luke has silly names for
I do,
everything.
I do. I like that. That's part of my hobby.
Yeah, no, it is.
In fact, I even do that on some of the episodes, because I'll do
We've noticed.
that. Yeah.
Coming up with silly names for things. And that's a good thing to do with your leftovers. You have more peppers than you needed to make a sauce. You can dehydrate them later on and make a dry powder out of the rest of them.
And the thing is with um, dehydrating is maybe throw it in your freezer because you're going to use it somewhere else, but you end up not using it. You can't necessarily ferment those peppers that you threw in the freezer, but you can always dehydrate. So that's
The
a
reason being, remember I mentioned lactobacillus, lactic bacteria? Well, freezing kills all of the bacteria in there, and there's no guarantee that they're going to come back. Like you need those bacteria for fermentation. And if you try to ferment them after they've been frozen, they'll either not do anything, just simply not ferment,
or spoil.
or they'll eventually mold.
One of the things that you can do though, if you end up fermenting and you threw some stuff in the freezer, adding that brine back in can sometimes
Yeah.
kickstart a ferment, but there's no guarantees. So again, said it before, I'll say it again. Look some other videos up.
Yeah.
Look some other forms up. There's a lot of people that are smarter than us out there. So
I probably could do an instruction video, but this is not an instruction video.
no, it's not an instruction video. This is something that we have as a hobby. This is random geek culture, and
This is a
that's
geek
one of
out.
the things we geek out about.
Yeah.
Which considering of the time and everything, you wanna do a geek out?
Oh no. Oh, I didn't think of one. I
I've
didn't
got
think of
one,
one.
so maybe you can think of one while I'm going over mine.
Go on, geek outs.
Okay, so I know this is the new hotness and everybody's talking about it, but my gosh, is Elden Ring fantastic? It's fantastic. I I love that game. I haven't felt this way about a game in a while. In fact, the last time that I really felt this way about a game, um, it was probably Legend of Zelda. Actually, no. You know what? No, the last time I felt this way about a game was Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima had that, but there is more to Elden Ring. Obviously, there is a steep learning curve for that game, and I've never liked Souls like games. I've always been bad at them. So what I did was I looked up a guide on how to level myself up quickly at the beginning. So then, because there's no difficulty slider, you know, there's no difficulty slider. So I can't make the game easier on myself. So I made the game easier on myself by leveling up. The thing that the game doesn't tell you is that leveling up your character doesn't necessarily make you better at the game. Your gear does, and a lot of like old stage MMOs or late stage MMOs, it's not your level that makes you awesome. It's the gear that you have, and you're really getting your gear more than gaining your level. A lot of people are really uptight about oh well, when as soon as you die you lose all your XP. XP doesn't really matter so much in this game. It's your gear. And when you die, you don't drop your loot. You only drop your XP. So, if you get a chance, Alex, or anybody listening, Elden Ring's pretty cool. Give it a chance. Get it on a sale if you don't want to get it, when it's brand new. Get it on a sale. It's really good. It's really good. All right. Did you think of one, Alex?
Nothing other than the game that I've been playing recently, No Man's Sky. I never played No Man's Sky whenever it came out, and I know it was like the hype or the controversy, and I never really followed all that. I am told that the game has changed considerably from when it came out. And so I don't know. I didn't experience all of that growing pains or whatever. Um, I'm playing it on PS4, but I know it's on Switch and it's on Steam now. Yeah, it's fun. You know, I'm not gonna say it's the best game I've ever played, but um it's nice to just explore. That's the kind of game it is. It has a main story, but the main gameplay loop is just going
Exploring.
around, finding stuff, figuring out what to do with it. It's a good example of what they call emergent gameplay, that there's not necessarily a narrative, there's not a story. You kind of, your own story happens as it happens. You go to a planet, you find a weird outpost, there's monsters inside of it, you fight them or not. you know, you just run away. And then just go about your business, figuring out, finding out what all's on this planet, and if you're bored with that one, go to a different one. Like that's kind of the game. you know.
I played No Man's Sky about a year after it released, and I enjoyed it then. I mean, I understand that it's even changed a lot since the last time I played it. And I'm gonna have to, endorse give No Man's Sky a chance. I mean, it's a fun game. I'm not gonna say that it's like the most amazing gaming experience you're ever gonna have, but it's pretty good. It's pretty cool, and it's a little bit outside of everything else. That's the thing. If
It
you're
is
looking,
unique. It
yeah,
is unique.
if you're
It
looking
has
for something
some
else,
MMO elements to it, in that, like, even if you don't have like the PlayStation Online account and stuff where you actually can play simultaneous multiplayer, yeah, the things that you discover in the game are permanent. That they are static. They stay that way. And whenever other people go to a planet that you discovered, it says that you discovered it. Whenever you build a base, it stays there. Other people can find that base. Um, and like that's, it is a shared ecosystem. It's a shared universe, but it's also so fantastically big because it's procedurally generated and it's random, and there's so many pentillion different
yeah,
planets.
when I was
But
playing,
that said, you do run into other people's planets once in a while. That's kind of cool.
there was only one time where I had actually ran into another player. Um,
Yeah, no, I've not saw another actual person.
and you've played it a lot more than I had. I probably put like 30 hours into it, maybe. You know how long
Yeah,
you?
maybe 80.
Oh,
Like I kind of was in it for a while.
yeah. And you're playing a different iteration, and you might be on a different side of the galaxy than I was on. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing. It's a pretty big game. The thing that I really liked when I was playing it though was when you started it up, it would zoom in and you would pass all these other star systems and stuff like that, and you would see the names and maybe even the players of the people that played that went to that star system. And I always thought that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that game.
Yeah. So No Man's Sky, it's worth a shot.
It's worth a shot. So, I think we're going to finish out. We never did the intro to the episode, and I think that's okay. We don't have to do it every time.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, watch more. Like this episode. Like it on the YouTubes. Like it on the Anchor. I don't know if you can like on Anchor. Can you? I don't know. And all the links to on Linktree can take you to all the other places. Then there's a link to Linktree in the links of the link, and you can drop me an email at randomwvgeek@gmail.com. You can even send me a text to 304 566 9777. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, and this wets your whistle to fermenting and gardening, and that you look more into it. Because, cap on this episode, we looked up stuff. We encourage you to as well, because that's part of the experience, is looking at other people's experiences and making them your own. I mean, that's where this came from. and look what I made. You can look what I made. You
Yeah.
can't taste it, but yeah. And Alex with his ramp sauce. It's just get out there and experiment. But
Plant your gardens.
But be careful. You don't want botulism. Welcome to the end.
Welcome to the end.